What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tape 2 Show, where we talk about some of my favorite movies in my ever-growing horror VHS collection. This week, we roll out the red carpet for a true icon that many of us grew up with long before we indulged in the R-rated splendor that is the horror genre. That's our Saturday morning companion, Scooby Doo, and his first direct-to-home video feature, Scooby Doo on Zombie Island from 1998. Now, although Scooby Doo had been around for years before in a multitude of different formats, it was just a TV series or some direct-to-TV movies, but Hanna-Barbera Productions in 1998 decided to crank it up to the next level and give us our first, never-before-seen direct-to-home video movie. As a kid that religiously watched Scooby Doo, you bet your ass I watched this movie on the original air date, rented it constantly at my local video store, and then watched it especially the following year in 1999 for the Cartoon Network's Scooby Doo Blair Witch Project Special Marathon. This shit was a game changer for the Scooby Doo universe. But what makes this movie so different from everything else that came before it? We'll get into the fine details after the breakdown. Roll the film. This movie starts out with an explosive monster chase scene right off the bat, showing us this fancy new animation style that made my 8-year-old brain fucking explode. But after once again getting duped by these meddling kids, the monster is revealed to be just another dude. This is a major blow to the group as they end up splitting up and going their separate ways. Shaggy and Scooby are in a state of job to job as they just can't hold it down. Surprise, surprise. Velma owns a mystery bookshop that isn't quite what she expected, and Fred and Daphne have a successful show, Coast to Coast with Daphne Blake, where they try to find real monsters, but to no avail. Daphne's feeling down, and so for her birthday, Fred gets the gang all together for a reunion to scope out some new spots for a good mystery. After being told a hot lead on Moonscar Island while they're visiting in Louisiana, they can't help but check it out. After arriving at the Moonscar Pepper Plantation, the gang quickly realizes that things are far from ordinary. That night, during dinner, Shaggy and Scooby, while roaming through the woods, get caught up in the middle of a random zombie attack. As they run around like maniacs, they eventually meet up with the gang, and only to realize that the zombies are actual zombies and not creeps in costumes. As the tables turn for the mystery crew, they find themselves up against spirits, hordes of zombies, and the real villains of the story, the plantation owners, who have secretly been drawing people to the island for years to feast upon their life force, because these aren't your run-of-the-mill bayou plantation owners, these are bona fide cat god worshipping monsters who have been around for many, many years. In fact, these cat people are the reason there's even zombies in the first place, as they used their cat god powers many years ago to seek revenge on Morgan Moonscar and his crew of pirates. What will the gang do now that they're in a situation they've never been in before, as the monsters are all real? Better grab your box of Scooby snacks for Scooby Doo on Zombie Island. Since its release, we have had 35 direct-to-home video Scooby Doo movie sequels, and I still think that this is the best one. Its tone and delivery was darker and more aggressive, the animation was more detailed, which added to the scariness of the monsters, and it really had more of the horror element going on. We left the safety net of the Saturday morning rhythm, and the studio really threw us for a loop on who the bad guys were and what they were capable of. This movie did to Scooby Doo what Ocarina of Time or Super Mario 64 did to their respective IPs. It gave the world and all of its characters a level of complexity that we had never really seen before, revolutionizing not only how we see the characters, but also what we expect to see moving forward as far as story and character depth. And let's just take a second and talk about the absolute voice acting royalty that is jam-packed into this movie. I seriously can't believe how many people they got on the roster for this project, and some might surprise you. We got Billy West playing Shaggy, Mary Kay Bergman as Daphne, Frank Welker, the original voice of Fred, is voice acting Fred, BJ Ward as Velma, and outside of the gang, they brought in Adrienne Barbeau, Tara Strong, Cam Clark, Jim Cummings, Mark Hamill, and Ed Gilbert. That's all of our childhoods jam-fucking-packed all into one thing that is an absolute juggernaut of a Scooby-Doo movie, and although it doesn't have the Hex Girls, it's got about everything else, which makes it a perfect fit for us here at the Tape Tomb. Here's some facts about Scooby Doo on Zombie Island. This film marks the first time someone besides Casey Kasem voices Shaggy. Reason being, Kasem refused to provide the voice of Shaggy if he would not be a vegetarian like himself. Shaggy eats crayfish in the movie. Instead, Shaggy is voiced by voice acting legend Billy West. Although the movie's promotion was that Mystery Inc. had never really met a real monster before, this isn't necessarily true. The gang had encountered several real supernatural monsters and beings in a pup named Scooby Doo, Ghost Who's Coming to Dinner from 1998, the new Scooby Doo movies Mystery in Persia from 73, the new Scooby Doo Mysteries Ghosts of the Ancient Astronauts from 84, and the new Scooby Doo Mysteries A Halloween Hassle at Dracula's Castle from 84. The entries made between 85 and 88 had real monsters, but it was only parts of the crew. Not to mention my two favorite old school Scooby movies, The Ghoul School and The Boo Brothers. There are a few in-jokes as the gang settle into Moonscar Island in this movie. The first is when Shaggy ponders if he should dress up for dinner, opening a suitcase full of identical clothing that he's already wearing. Then he trims his whiskers, but they look no different. Meanwhile, Fred tries on an ascot before deciding against it. There was recently a sequel to this movie, Return to Zombie Island, that came out in 2019 that honestly, take it from the opinion of someone who's seen them all, from Wrestle Mystery to the Gourmet Ghost to even the new one with Elvira and Bill Nye the Science Guy and DC's Scarecrow. It's absolutely not worth it, and it's kind of a tarnish to the original title. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of The Tape Tomb. I've been your host, Larry Downs, and if you've liked this week's episode, make sure you click that like and subscribe button down below, or drop a comment telling me what I should do in future episodes. What great movies haven't I talked about yet? You decide. Tune in every other week for our sister series, Airlock Shock, starring Nick Haskin. He's always talking about great sci-fi movies, just like we do horror here at The Tape Tomb. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm Larry Downs. Stay spooky, my friends, and we will see you in the sequel.